I've been working in the industry for 10 years prior to starting my own business and learning the ropes. And it was a month before I was about to get married and renovating a home. And I thought, if I'm ever going to do it, this has got to be the time. So I ventured out on my own. I was actually going to start a promotional merchandise business. And when I had my first meeting with our client, a potential client, and they said, we're looking at rebranding and doing a whole new uniform program for all of our staff. And I thought, uniforms? Yeah, we do uniforms. And off I went, walked out of that meeting and did some research and came back and presented and won our first uniform contract. So I fell into that space and I thought, this is pretty easy. And kicked on from there and developed an online tool that allowed our clients to manage their uniform ordering processes and promotional merchandise processes. So I actually fell into the uniform space, and that's probably one of our biggest areas in the business now.
I had a business partner in London who just kept going. He'd call me up and say, hey, register this domain name for me, and we'd go to our provider and register the name until our provider, Pipex in London at the time, just called me up one day and said, listen, you're just hassling us too much, why don't you join the naming board, it was called, which we did, and that enabled us to sell directly to the public domain names, and from there it kind of grew into web hosting and all the other ancillary services. That was a different business in the UK, but it was a carbon copy of NetRegistry.
Yeah, I'd worked in chartered accounting firms for some time. I'd written a best-selling book where I'd interviewed 34 prominent Australians on getting ahead Australia today and the future, and I'd noticed that those people who'd grown great businesses were people that were trying to grow. I was stuck in firms that where I was being led by people who weren't really into growth, personal growth or professional growth. They were pretty happy where they were. And one of the people I'd interviewed was a bloke called Peter Ritchie, who came to Australia as a founder of McDonald's, or was in Australia and was a founder of McDonald's. And he said you can only grow as fast as the organisation that you're in. So I kept looking at these bosses who weren't very excited about their lives and weren't very interested in helping other people grow. And finally, in utter frustration, I said, I'm just going to get out of this because it sucks. And one of my mates said, look, why don't you just come across the road and just start a firm and I'll run it. And so I did. I went across the road and said, if we really focused on helping people get to where they wanted to be by growing our internal people and helping them grow our clients, and that would probably work okay, and that's worked pretty well. I think many people think that you can build something significant with some sort of family balance. And I wrote another book last year called Business Owners Wisdom, where I interviewed 16 prominent business people. And I remember Lorna Jane, who's the founder of the Gym Gear chain, saying that if anyone talks to me about work-life balance, I know that they haven't found something that they're overwhelmingly passionate about. If you really love what you do, there's not such a distinction. So it's just common amongst the people I've met that they work enormous hours to get the thing off the ground. It does take a huge amount of commitment, and I'm not sure that there's a sort of cultural idea of work-life balance, I think, has affected people's understanding of how much work it takes initially to get a business off the ground. Not that I'm advocating our 80-hour weeks for life, but it does take an initial commitment. Now the business is 7.5 years old. From my point of view, it's pretty relaxed. I can work the hours that I want to work, and I guess that's why I made the initial commitment to have the level of independence and freedom that a business can give you.
You know, there's endless stories of small business owners whose businesses fail not because it's not a good idea or they're not dedicated, but because they just simply burn out and they lose sight of what they're trying to do because they're spending so much time trying to do it.
But for me now, I'm actually trying to get the business to a point where I don't have to be there. So the advantage of being in your own business is you can actually create that work-life balance where you don't actually have to be at the office every day. And you know when you've got it to a point where you can take that week off and not stress about, is this going to happen or is that going to happen? And the trick is to build the business to a point where it allows you to walk away from it. So I think that's quite key. What I've found out is I don't need to be the best at every single role in my business. If I can go out and find the best people for each specific task, they still wouldn't know the business as good as I would. And I just had that knack of what was going on. But to get the best people in the best roles to that business, you always find that they'll really take the business for you. And if you've got that passion from the top of the business, it actually filters down to the staff. So that was very, very key for me to get the right people in the right seats. And what I found over those years, my role went from starting from home on my own, doing everything. I was the accounts department, I was the admin team, all of that. And as the business grew and I started employing the sales team, I started seeing myself stepping back in the business and being, playing the chess and moving people around and more managing and delegating time and delegating things to the staff, and that allowed the business to then start going forward in quite a quick pace. So we were ranked in the BRW fastest growing companies for the first 4 years. We were averaging 75% growth year on year. So it was pretty quick growth.
I guess in my business, I'd always wanted it to just be big. I never owned a small business. Even when there were two of us there, it wasn't a small business. It was just a very big business waiting to become big. So I think for me, success, the measure of it was a number of things. One of them was getting to a certain size and scale, and that's, I think that's a personal measure depending on your business and how big you want it to be. Part of it was being able to just relax, just get to that point where you're not just consumed by the challenges all the time, and you get to a point where you can actually just step back a little bit and enjoy it a bit more. Selling a business is a measure of success as well. You can run a business and you can earn a living out of it, but there is an aspect of exiting a business that's a definite success measure, and it's a difficult thing to get right.
It's important when you go into your own business to ask that question to yourself: why? Why am I in this business for? What do I want to achieve? And success is going to vary from person to person. For me, it was to be a market leader. I can comfortably say that we're one of the leaders in our industry. Our brand is recognised across our competitors, and having the ability to build it. Have that big, hairy, audacious goal. Set those goals that you would think, I want to get to this point. And once you've got that, if that's a measure of your success, great. But you've got to really understand what it is, because otherwise you just end up in the rat race, running around, and not knowing what you're actually trying to achieve. So that term of success, what is it? It's really setting what it is for yourself and striving towards meeting that goal.
I believe that successful people are people that know how to get their goals. And so for me, it was just about being able to see clearly what my goals were over the long term and test myself, against my ability to achieve those goals. In the business, it's about helping our people become the best person they can become, personally first and professionally. And similarly with our clients, helping them to become the best they can become and build the best business that they can build.
Your vision of success will change every step of the business as well. So each period that you'll go through, what you think now is, oh wow, if I get to that point, I'll be so happy, I'll be over the moon, I'm a real great success. Then you get to that point, it's like, now what? Okay, what's my next challenge? What's that next success going to look like? So it's very important in business when you're starting up. Don't get disheartened. Always have those goals along the way. And whether it's a 3-year success plan, or 5 years, 10 years, at least have something that's actually driving you. Otherwise, what's the point? I'm always looking for staff constantly. So if there's someone that I know that's good, I want them working in our business. But generally, as soon as they start, the culture, I don't actually decide whether they're good or not for the business. My staff will tell me. They'll either fit into the culture or they won't. Some people we've had over the years that have been with us after first 2 to 3 months, you'd feel like they've been in the business for 4 or 5 years. And then you have some people come along and they've been there for a few days and it's like, wow, it feels like you've been here forever. Not long, you got to get out. So, the staff, really, the culture, they'll come to me and say, Danny, I don't think it's the right fit. And your gut instinct tells you that. And it's also a lot of the behaviours within the business. So that's key. If you've got good people around you, they'll weed them out very quickly.
My executive team have been with me for 12, 13 years, most of them. COO, CTO, obviously my business partner's been there for the duration of the business. And probably with each of those senior people in the company, I've gotten to a point where I've gone, this is just not working, they've got to move on. And I've kind of persevered and didn't get to the point where I've suggested that to them. And I think, so it's a difficult question. Sometimes you can want to move somebody on because at a particular point in their development, in the company development, they're not right for the company. That doesn't mean they won't ever be right for the company. So it's a fine line between whether you're just ruthless and you turf people because they're not working out, or whether you persevere with them and see if they can be developed into a more productive position or role or relationship within the company. It varies for different staff. I mean, we've started an outbound telemarketing team, and we hire homeless people that get put to us from St Vincent's Job Network, that sort of thing. And with them, then they're untrained, they've had no background in business, and the people recruiting are just identifying that right stuff. So they haven't got the skills, haven't been given the skills or had the skills or even had work experience, but they're just looking for that street smart right stuff. And those telemarketers, they come in and they go out. I mean, it's just high turnover. They'll be hired and then they'll be fired 3 days later if they don't work out. So at different levels in the company, there's a different natural time, I guess, that you get to the point of saying, okay, well, this isn't working, they've got to move on.
The thing that we do in our business, which I've never seen done in any other business, is we run what's called a 4-hour work test, where we actually have written a structured process where they come into our business, they're assigned to a manager, and they do this 4 hours worth of actual work, their actual design tasks, in one of our teams, in one of our offices during an actual work day. We initially did them on Saturday mornings because we were working on Saturdays. We've never worked on Sundays. The reason we do that is we can observe people doing, what we're actually hiring them to do. We get a bit of a sense, given their reaction to the idea that we might do a work test, whether they'll fit in with us, because we might ask you to take the post to the post station as well, which we will do if we need to. So we're looking at that attitude. That work test tells us exactly, what they actually can do, whereas recruitment agents are telling us all sorts of things. We don't really want to hear that. We just want to see that. And then we'll run a second, again, structured 40 questions, 20 technical questions, detailed interview with a couple of the partners. And I put us under a lot of pressure around that to say, let's not hire, let's hire slow, let's look at another person if we're not 120% sure. But then we give a 300% commitment. And we believe that commitment fosters a confidence in that person that will help them commit to the organisation. We don't call them staff, we call them team. And we think that they'll get on board. We've had 4 resignations in 7.5 years. It's worked pretty well. You're twice as likely to leave the organisation by being fired as leaving the organisation through a resignation. And I think that's the final part, that if you know you've got it wrong, you need to do something about it quickly.